Israel has decided on Tuesday to appear before the Hague-based International Court of Justice to defend itself against the genocide crime case filed by South Africa. According to the Israeli public broadcaster Khan, the decision was taken following intensive discussions between Israeli top officials and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. South Africa filed an application instituting proceeding against Israel before the International Court of Justice concerning alleged violations by Israel of its obligation under the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide in relation to Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. The application alleges that acts and omissions by Israel are genocidal in character, as they are committed with the requisite specific intent to destroy Palestinians in Gaza as part of a broader Palestinian national, racial, and ethnic group, and that of the conduct of Israel. To further discuss this, I am joined by Williem, a senior training coordinator at the Institute of Security Studies. Thank you so much for your time, Williem.
Good afternoon to you.
All right, now let's get to it. What exactly is your immediate reaction to this particular move by South Africa against Israel?
Well, it's come a long way. You know, in recent months, we saw that the relationship between South Africa and Israel has deteriorated to such an extent that South Africa is actually in process of closing down the diplomatic mission of Israel in South Africa. So that is a process that's ongoing. We also see there are a lot of pressure groups from the Muslim community in South Africa that is very strongly advocating for the government to act. But they also in South Africa we have quite a big Jewish community that is now pushing back against it. So in that sense, we see that the South African government is in the middle, but we see that what has happened now, as you mentioned, they opted to go to the ICJ. And in order to file charges there, that is quite interesting that they did not approach the ICC, that's the International Criminal Court. Yeah, that is the development here in South Africa.
All right, let's of course look at the implication of this on South Africa and its relationship, particularly when it comes to the international community. We know that Israel, for instance, is strong allies with the United States and the United Kingdom, even with whatever is going on, sadly, in Gaza at the moment. Don't you think that to a very large extent, this would negatively impact South Africa's relationship, by extension to the allies of Israel?
Indeed, South Africa is currently in a very peculiar position. We must see this whole thing against the backdrop of the BRICS organization that has been formed by South Africa, Russia, China, and India and Brazil. And we saw that recently countries like Egypt and also Iran have joined BRICS. So that is your one part of the political spectrum. And then on the other side of the spectrum, of course, you see the people or the countries that ally themselves with the West, and more in particular with the USA, as is in the case with Israel.
Now, let's also look at the economic implications of this also, particularly on South Africa. We know that it has pretty much strong economic ties with the West. And we also know that quite a number of countries are trying to sort of bounce back post-COVID when it comes to the economy. Now, what do you see happening as a result of this move by South Africa on its economy?
Well, we can just hope that the repercussions won't be too severe because, as you just mentioned, the biggest trading partners of South Africa lay in the West, and not necessarily within the BRICS spectrum. I mean, if you look at a country like Russia, about 7% of the trade of South Africa is done with Russia, compared to the vast majority that is done with these countries in the West, including Israel, the United States, and of course, Europe.
Now, I would like to come back home, that is to South Africa. I know that South Africa, as much as it has a strong Palestinian community, it also has a very strong Israeli community too. What do you think this move what kind of message will it send to the Israel community in South Africa?
I think to some extent it's alienating the Jewish community in South Africa that, as you mentioned, is quite a big community. Apart from everything else, they are quite a strong force within the economy of South Africa. So for the government to openly take sides, and for instance, if you look at the charges that have been laid at the ICJ, we see that it was one-sided, even though they condemned what happened on 7 October. We see that they did not lay any charges against Hamas. So I think that was maybe not a very wise move on the side of the South African government, because to that extent they really alienated the Jewish community. And that also, places South Africa squarely in the one corner, fighting Israel and as you mentioned, the West.
All right. Now, before I let you go, Williem, let's look at also the jurisdiction of the ICJ. Is it within their purview to look into matters like this? And what are we looking at in terms of potential outcome of this case?
Yeah, in the first place, you must just remember you've got the ICJ, that's your International Criminal Court of Justice. That is primarily a civil tribunal. And then you've got the ICC, that's the International Criminal Court. That is your criminal tribunal. And that is also the tribunal that actually issued a warrant of arrest against President Putin after what happened in his country in recent years. So if you look at the two, the ICC is not a organ of the United Nations, where the ICJ is an organ of the ICJ, and Israel, South Africa, as well as the state of Palestine has got observer status there. So therefore, it gives the ICJ jurisdiction to preside over this matter. We also saw similarly what happened in a similar case. If you look back at 2007, there was a case of Bosnia-Herzegovina and versus Serbia, where the ICJ actually made a decision, and that was binding. We must just understand that whenever there is a verdict by the ICJ, it is final. You cannot appeal. So what will happen, as what happened in the case of the USA and Nicaragua back in the 80s, it will be referred. It might be referred to the Security Council in the United Nations, where they will then come up with a binding resolution. But we also know that the US or the permanent members have got veto powers there. So it will all depend what will happen in this. Should the verdict be a favor Israel, we don't see it will go any further. But should Israel then become a sort of the guilty party here in terms of the verdict, we foresee that because of the strong alliance with some of the members within the Security Council, it might end up there.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Williem Els, a senior training coordinator at the Institute of Security Studies. Once again, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.